Okay, good morning again, everyone, and welcome to our training, What's New in Dynamics GP 2018. In additional to covering what's new in GP 2018, we will cover GP 2015 coming forward because I'm sure a lot of you would still be on versions such as 2013 or even earlier. So first we'll look at system enhancements, then we'll get into financial enhancement and then into the distribution enhancements. Okay, so the first area we're going to look at is workflows. Right, so workflows was introduced within GP in GP 2013, and the feature started off with just in a few areas where we had workflows, and now it is pretty extensive. So as you can see, in purchasing, we have approvals for payables batches, transactions, purchase orders, purchase requisition. By the way, purchase requisition has also been added to GP. Prior to this, our starting point was at the purchase order level. So we have purchase requisition approval, invoice matching or purchase invoice approval, receiving, and also approval for creation of a new vendor or editing vendor information. Okay, then we have under the financial area, we have approval for new GL accounts or editing existing GL accounts, and we have general ledger batch approval. Under sales, we have approval for receivable batches as well as sales transaction entries. And under the payroll HR side, we have employee profile approval. So an employee can actually go into the system and edit their personal information, and that personal information will be submitted to their manager for approval before it's committed into GP. There's also employee skills approval. So again, an employee can go into GP and update if they have acquired any recent training or any new skills. And there are some other approvals here that are related to payroll. Okay, so as I mentioned, while workflow did exist in GP starting from GP 2013, more has been added to workflow. So for instance, there is the copy step feature. So instead of having to create each step, you can copy a step and edit it. So that's the copy feature here. There is the reminder area. So now once approval is or a task is overdue, you are able to set how many reminder days you want as the administrator. And once we have reached those days, a reminder email is sent out to the approver, reminding them to approve. Also, a further enhancement will be document attachment. So within GP, we were always able to attach documents, but it's a lot more comprehensive now, which I will show you in a while. But what I want to mention is that document attachment has been incorporated within workflow approval and within emailing. So for instance, if I were to create a requisition or a payables transaction, and there are documents that I'm attaching, and let's say I'm creating a new vendor in the system, and I'm creating some documents, um, I'm filling out some documents that vendor would need to have before approval, I can upload those documents. And when the approval goes out, let's say we send our approval to manager A, whatever documents that we saved against the record, whether it's a transaction or a master record, also goes in the email. So they have all of the information before making the approval. Right. In addition, still under workflow area, we have the workflow history report that has been added to GP. So depending on which type of workflow you select a report on, or maybe a date range or due date if you want to see those that are overdue, or particular manager or user. Here I have inserted show me all workflow history reports for all purchase requisitions. And what this is going to show me, it's not the details within the requisition, right? We'll see minor details from the requisition, such as description, number, right? And who it was assigned to. But what is more important in the workflow history report is that we see every step in that workflow. So we see who submitted it, who approved it, who recalled, if it was recalled, if any approval is pending, and we see the date, the completion date and the due date. Okay, so let's just take a little look at the document attachment feature. And also in looking at the document attachment feature, we'll also take a look at workflow in action. So throughout GP and the newer versions of GP, so let's say we look at receivables transaction entry screen. You will see this attach paperclip at the top of your screens, right? That means the attachment feature is available within that screen. And just to reiterate, you will see this attachment feature available throughout most of your transaction entry screens in GP, but you'll also see this attachment feature available for master records. So you'll see it for vendors, customers, inventory items as well. Right? So as long as you see a blue paperclip, it means that nothing has been attached as yet. So if I were to click here, we see that nothing has attached as yet. This is our document attachment management window. If I were to click attach, and let's say I add a document, right? Then I can also preview that document. Now notice I added a text file. I could also add, I think I have another file here, a picture, right? So I can add a text file, I can add a PDF, a Word, Excel, any type of file, basically a JPEG, a PNG, right? So we are able to preview what it was attached, and whoever is looking at the screen can also preview what was attached, right? So it's not just the user that is attaching. So select OK here, and notice we no longer see a blue paperclip. Now we see a white icon, and that tells us that a document has been attached. So as I mentioned, I'm going to show you workflow in action, and also we'll see document attachment as well. So let's look at the purchase requisition workflow, because purchase requisition is a pretty new area in GP. So I had created a requisition number 25, right? And the requisition is pending approval, which means I submitted already, but it was not approved as yet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to recall this requisition, which is a normal function that a requesting user will have. So I'll recall the requisition. All right, so I want to get my requisition number 25 on the screen again. So this is my requisition. As you can see, the workflow name is test3 and it has been recalled. If I were to go to view history, I see that it was submitted by the system user, and I see the date and time, and I see when it was recalled. there was no approvals as yet. So now because this requisition has been recalled, of course, I have to resubmit it, right? Let's assume I recall the requisition and notice there's an email coming through and that email is telling me that the requisition has been recalled. So let's say I recall the requisition because I wanted to change some information and I will change the amount on the requisition. And by the way, requisitions could be submitted with zero amount because in a lot of cases, requesters don't know the amount or the cost for an item. They're simply just making the request. If you would notice, vendor ID is missing. Now, GP will allow us to submit the requisition with the missing vendor ID because it is also known that a user making a request for an item may not know who is the vendor. When, however, this requisition reaches the purchaser will update the vendor ID and could also update the cost and may need to update the cost. So I made that change and I'm going to resubmit. And we put a workflow action comment that is going to go to the approver. Good. And we see now that the requisition is pending approval by manager 3. And if we go to the workflow history as well, we'll see the same, right? Pending approval by manager 3. So what we'll do is log in as manager 3. By the way, we see the recall and we see the resubmit as well here. So I'm actually going to switch my account, not my GP account, but my Windows account, because workflow approval uses your Windows account and your email. You don't have to be a GP user. So I'm going to switch to manager 3. Right. So while that is coming up, just a reminder that the manager got an email that they have a document for approval. And also the person who made the request got an email letting them know that their document has successfully submitted. Now, based on your settings, the manager could have also approved from within email or can log into GP as a light user, self-service user, sorry. So a self-service user would be people who are only going in the system to make requests or to approve, and it's a low-cost user. So we go to purchasing and purchase requisitions. There's not submitted and there's pending approval. So our requisition number 25 should be showing up here for manager 3. Good. So we see requisition number 25 is here. And from within this ribbon, we can select that particular requisition and approve, reject, delegate to another manager to approve. And we could also copy this requisition. Now we can also go into the requisition if we wanted to review in more detail. So let's say we go to edit, and it depends on your requisition settings whether someone can actually go into your requisition in edit mode, right? So here you can review in more detail and everything is okay, and we will go ahead to approve. And once we approve, we are prompted to put our comment. Good, so that requisition has been approved, and we will now switch back to our original user, which was a system user. Good, so we are now logging back in as the user who made the original request. Right, and here the user can go and access the requisition through the normal transaction entry window or through one of the reporting ribbons as we saw earlier. So we see the workflow is completed and the date and time. If we look at workflow history, we see all of the history that occurred as well as approved by manager one, final approved. So if we had sent to more than one manager built into our workflow approval, then here we would have just seen approve. And let's say when the second manager approve, then we see final approval, depending on how many approvers we have. Now, depending on the user and the security the user has, from within this requisition, the user can go to action and purchase. And notice we're seeing a warning here, and the warning here is because we left out vendor ID. Now remember, the requisition was able to go through the approval process without the vendor ID. However, when you're moving to purchase, so a purchase order, you must have a vendor. So at this stage, the purchaser will put in a vendor. Good, I notice the error is gone. If we click validate, we have no error. And generate. Now, if there was a problem, we'll get an exception report telling us what the issue is. We have the purchase order generation report coming up, which is telling us that the purchase order was successfully created. And here we see PO 2106 has been created. And we can confirm that. So if I go to the purchase order screen and I look for PO 2106, here is our purchase order. And if I were to click on this paper clip icon, I should be able to see what requisition is tied to this purchase order, so what requisition number. And I could also drill into that requisition and get all of the information, including the workflow history and attachments. Okay, so here we see when the requisition was resubmitted and the email was sent to the approver, we see that the attachments that were there went with the email so that the approver has all of the information they need when they're going to be approving. Okay, so that is it on workflow and document attachment. Right, let's look at another pretty new feature in GP. It's called SmartList Designer. And SmartList Designer exists within SmartList. So as you can see, this is our shortcut to SmartList here with our light bulb. And for those of you all who are familiar with an add-on for GP, SmartList Builder, SmartList Designer is very similar to SmartList Builder, where you basically use different GP tables and you create your own reports. So you link those tables and you create your own reports. So that is what SmartList Designer is about. However, SmartList Builder, as I mentioned, was a third-party product, which you would have to pay an additional fee for purchasing and then for annual maintenance. SmartList Designer, however, has been built within GP. So it has been added within GP and there is no additional cost attached. So I'm not going to build out any report. I'll just show you an example of one that is here that I would have created already. So this is a security related report. So there was some information we needed for security that wasn't available on a standard report. And here we use SmartList Designer to create this report. Now, if I were to click on new, it takes all of the information from that report and I could actually give the report a new name. So I could use one of the existing SmartList report and save as my own report and make changes, or I can use one of my reports that I created as well. Right, so these are some of the fields that were added. And also, when you create those reports, you could import and export those reports. So if you want those reports in to share with another GP environment as well, you can do that via import export. Okay, so we mentioned emailing earlier when we were looking at workflows, but emailing is available throughout GP as well. It's not just for workflows to send notifications to approvers, etc. So if we were to look at our email settings, you would see that we have some settings here. What format do you want to send documents out as? Right, we have DOCX for Word, PDF, XPS, and HTML, which is basically an email link or email icon. That should open and display exactly as the report displays in GP. Now, this setting really is geared for special document types, such as purchase orders, vendor remittance, sale invoices, statements, those kind of reports. So here, if I were to click on sales series, we see all of the document types that you can send out to your clients, and you will select which documents you want to be able to email out. It might not be all. And similarly, for purchasing, under purchasing, we just have the purchase order and the vendor remittance, which we can send out. Okay, so I did mention briefly that there is a self-service user type in GP, and the function of the self-service user, and that has been added in GP 2015. The function of the self-service user is a very light user, and the self-service user only interacts with GP for creation of requisition and submitting requisitions, or as an approver for any type of workflow. So it could be a sales invoice or any document like that. Once someone is logged in as a self-service user, they will be able to approve. So approvers do not need to be full users in GP. It's a much lower cost user. And the user type is now flagged in the user setup window. So when you create a user, you specify what type of user it is. So when that user logs in, they do not draw down or access from your full user license or your limited user license. While we're in this window, what I should also mention, there's also a new feature called copy settings, right? So I can have a new user and copy settings from an existing user, right? So copy settings means copy security settings. And in addition to copying security settings, we could copy homepage, role and content, and area pages as well. All right, so this is a feature that was added in GP 2018, where the administrator can set to remember the user ID and password, so that when you log in into GP and you bring up your GP icon, it logs directly into GP. There is also a remember company feature if you are using more than one company. So whichever company the user sets as a default, you log in directly and into GP without putting any password or company. Now, this is actually an issue that you might see in GP frequently. When one user tries to access a batch, you might see a message saying another person is editing that batch, or you might actually see it. You might see it here in the status. What has been added in GP 2016, now you can see which user ID is editing a batch, so that you'll be able to action or to request that a user closes a batch so that you can action a batch. And that applies to all batches in GP, not just financial batches. Okay, so under the financial enhancement area where we had a few changes was under the fixed asset area. So in GP 2015, a fixed asset year-end close report was added. And that is under the financial routines area. And the only time you can actually print this report is when you are running year-end close for fixed assets. So year-end close for fixed asset is now mandatory in GP before you can begin posting transactions the new year within fixed asset. So one, it's mandatory that you close the fixed asset year, and two, when you close the year, you will receive a year-end closing report popping up on your window, and that's the only time that report will print. Additionally, if we look at the setup window, the company setup window within fixed asset, right, you are now able to auto-generate asset ID. So in previous versions of GP, the user had to actually input an asset ID, and you can still do that if you choose to do that, or you can select the auto-generate an ID, and you can carry out that setting by class. So it doesn't have to be one number incrementing across the board, but by each class. Additionally, taxes were not included in acquisition costs previously. Now we have a checkbox in the setting to allow taxes to be included in the acquisition cost for the asset. Also, all asset information by default, financial information, was posted to the general ledger in summary. So for instance, if I run my depreciation routine at this month end, and I had 100 assets and 3 classes were affected, I would only see GL accounts summarized for those 3 classes. So I will see totals that was affected by that depreciation routine. Now we have the option of sending details to the general ledger. And of course, the advantage of sending those details to the GL, reconciliation would be a lot easier if you choose to send details. If you feel that you don't need to send details to the GL, you just leave this unchecked, because of course, checking this means a lot more information is now going across to the general ledger, which means your information in GP would be growing at a faster rate. Okay, in our general journal window, this feature has been there probably since, I think, since GP 2013, but just for those who are not aware, there's a copy journal feature. So when I'm entering a new journal, I can copy from an existing or past journal and from our current year or previous year, making data entry a little bit easier. And one of the favorite features, and this was introduced in GP 2013, one of the favorite features is being able to paste journals from Excel. So before this, we had a quick journal template within GP, but I know that a lot of you love using Excel and a lot of you will prepare your journal in Excel. So now it's a lot easier. Let me just open my Excel. So while that's opening, we go back to General Journal. We just put in our basic header information. Our batch is optional. Right, and once we have put in our information, we come down to the line area and we go to our Excel sheet and we copy and paste our data, Control C and Control V. Notice I'm not taking up the headers. The headers are just for our guidance. And just for those of you who might not be aware, this is the format that is required. It's just 4 columns that is required for your paste journal information. So I'm going to paste that in. And we have to use the paste from Excel button at the top of our window. And our information is in, right? And of course, this is just an example. I just have 2 entries, but it is very helpful when you have larger journals with a lot of GL accounts, such as payroll journals, depreciation journals, accruals, prepayments, those kind of things. So I'm going to delete this one. And what I'm going to show you, I'm going to bring in a journal with a GL account that does not exist in GP. Just to show you that GP does some validation for you. Right, so if there's an error, there was an error on data entry on the Excel sheet or the information coming across from a third-party system, you will be able to pick up on that error. So again, I'm going to copy my 2 lines of data. My cursor is on my line item again, and once I select paste, notice no information comes in on the screen, which tells me that there is something inaccurate with my data. And I get a GL transaction paste validation report, which again tells me there's a problem with my data, and the report tells us what is the issue. Right, so here we see GL account 0002050 does not exist in GP, right? Which is why our journal didn't go through. Okay, now we're going to the routines area under financial. And this is the area where we would close off the year. So year-end closing. And what has changed here is now there is a reverse historical year button. So previously, based on GP rules, you could post the most recently closed year. But now that there's this reverse historical year, you can reverse years going back as many as you need to, and therefore you'll be able to post to those years that was previously closed. Of course, once you have finished your posting exercise, you'll again close the year. Also, there's now a status bar at the bottom of the year-end closing window so that you can see the progress of your year-end close. Previously, this was not here. And so if the year-end close was taking a considerable amount of time, the person running close on the year would be unsure if it's complete or if it's not complete, until, of course, the year-end close report prints. Also, this gives us the opportunity to remove unused segments and keep or delete inactive accounts. So maintain means you want to keep the inactive accounts. Now, if you do reverse a historical year, you do need to run your reconcile process on all of your open years. Okay, so if we go to the inquiry area, previously, when we go to inquiry under financial, we'll see summary and we'll see summary history and we'll see detail and detail history. And what that means is historical data was showing up in a different window and non-historical data or current data was showing up in a different window. Now that information has been combined and all of our years is available within one window when we do that GL inquiry. Also, for those of you who import budgets into GP, export out to Excel and then import back into GP, there is the budget import exception report. So what that means, usually if there's an error with your budget, of course the budget wouldn't go in, but you wouldn't get any information on what the error is. Now your budget import exception report will actually tell you what is the issue. So for instance, if your budget in Excel, somebody deleted a line or added a new line or did something with the columns, that would throw off an exception. Right, on your bank reconciliation side under financial, you are able to reprint some of your bank reports or your bank reconciliation reports. Right, so there's the outstanding transaction report, which you can now reprint. This was added back in GP 2013. And previously, once your bank recon was complete, if you did not get the print report at that point, you could not reprint those reports. Okay, so very important feature that was added in GP 2016, adding bank rec history and adding the bank rec history table and removing transaction from that table. So what was done in GP, bank recs that have already been completed or reconciled, the information was sitting in the same table as your unreconciled transactions. And what a lot of users was experiencing is when they are attempting to either run the bank reconciliation or even to inquire on bank related data, they would find that the system is hanging because there's a lot of data that's been accessed. So what has been done is all of that historical data is being moved to a separate table and the current data is in a separate table. Of course, it's an exercise that you will need to complete, and that is the remove bank history screen that was added. You'll need to complete the exercise here where you actually move the reconciled transaction out to another table. Okay, so if we look at our company settings and options, there is a new setting that was added, and it's not just a setting, it's a feature within BankRec that affects how your cash receipts operate and how your cash receipts are posted. So those of you who actually work with BankRex know that cash receipts from whether it's from receivables or directly within the BankRec module, receipts in general, you have to do an additional step. You have to go through the step of deposit. And if you don't go through that step of deposit, then you don't see your receipts within the checkbook register or within your bank reconcile window when you're ready to reconcile your bank, right? So now you are able to bypass that step. If this setting is selected, automatically post cash receipt deposit. So what that means, when a receipt is entered in receivables or in bank recon and you post, once this is selected, that receipt will automatically go to your bank recon and automatically go to your checkbook register. And also, if you post receipts in batches, so this applies to both single or to batches. So let's say you have a deposit for the day, you create a batch that reflects that deposit for the day, and once you post that batch, the total goes across the bank recon. So it would vary based on your business type, whether you are posting single receipt transaction or batches of transactions. Okay, also we are able to reprint remittances. So previously, when you print your check, you get a remittance or a stub with your check, but there was no reprint for that remittance in case anything was misplaced. So now there's that reprint feature. Let's just get a vendor with one of those. Right, so notice there's this recreate check stub button. Now this was added back in GP 2013. So some of you may have this already and some may not. So there's a recreate check stub feature when you inquire on your payment. And here you are able to reprint the remittance. Right, so still under the payables and purchasing section, if we were to look at utilities, what has been added is a vendor combiner modifier. Now, this feature was available previously within the PSTL tool for GP. So it's only if you're using the special tool you were able to access this feature. Now it has been added within GP. However, it is still a process that requires administrator privileges. So for instance, before you run this process, you would want your IT admin to take a backup of your data. So the vendor combiner modifier feature does two things. You either have multiple vendors that you're combining to bring to one vendor. So let's say you have 3 vendors in error, your users created new vendor IDs when the vendor already existed, and you ended up with 3 vendor IDs. You decide which one you want to use, and that is going to be your destination vendor ID, and your source will be the other 2, and all transactions from there will go to your destination vendor ID. That is the combiner feature. The modifier feature would be if you have a vendor ID, of course, you know IDs cannot be edited in GP. But if an ID was entered, let's say using the wrong name or the wrong convention, you can use here to correct it. So it's just, in this scenario, you have one vendor, but for some reason you need to change the vendor ID. You can use the vendor modifier feature. Okay, so for those of you who use EFT and who bank with Scotiabank, just to let you know that the EFT format for Scotiabank has been added. However, it's a Canadian-based format, so we have to check if it's in alignment with what is used within our region as well. Okay, if we were to go to the payments window in payables, just a note that the naming of these windows have changed. So previously, you might see bill check batch, edit check, print check, post check. The terminology check has been removed, and the reason why the terminology has been removed is because these windows, we can process many types of payments, not just checks. We can process checks, credit card, cash, electronic fund transfer, or ACH. So that's why the terminology has changed. The function of the windows has not changed. However, if we do go to bill payment batch, there are two additional features here. So usually we have to select all of these settings at the bottom of our bill payment batch window. Each time you go in the bill payment batch, what we can do now, once we have those settings, we create an option. We can call it anything. You can call it your initials, demo, or test. And once you save that option, you always use that option when you come in this window, and your settings will show up here. Secondly, you may have scenarios where you have a vendor and you have multiple invoices from that vendor, and that vendor has requested that each invoice is a payment by itself. So they don't want those multiple invoices being paid on one check or one transfer. And a good example might be your utility companies or like the telephone utility company. And for a scenario like that, we now have the option where you can have one payment per vendor or one payment per invoice. And you can have that set in against the vendor account itself as well. All right, so on the receivable side, we have that same feature where we saw the vendor combiner modifier feature. We also have that under sales and receivables and utilities, the customer combiner modifier with this very much same function as I just described. Right, if we were to go to receivable settings, there's a couple additional settings here. Display over credit icon. So if a customer is over credit limit, we see a warning, and also warn if a customer is over credit limit. So when you're entering a transaction and a customer is over credit limit, you set whether to give a warning or not. Let's see if we find a customer that may have that over credit limit icon. Good. So if you look at this first customer, we see the warning symbol here that tells us the customer has exceeded their credit limit. Right? So throughout GP, wherever you try to use this customer, you'll see this warning. By the way, you can now print a single statement from within the customer maintenance window. So if instead of going to routines and statement and that longer process, you can do it very quickly from here if one customer has requested a statement. Okay, so the prepayment function, we're going to purchasing now. So we are now under our distribution enhancement. And if we were to look at the purchase order entry screen, the prepayment option is here. And previously, we can only prepay on the subtotal. Now, if there are miscellaneous fees, freight, etc., we can now pay on the total. So how the prepayment works, basically, a prepayment amount is entered against the PO and it's processed by payables. And also in relation to prepayment, if we look at the purchase order setup window, we'll see that there's some settings that has been added here for prepayment. Do we want to allow prepayments? Do we want to create manual payments? Or if not, then it means computerized check. If we want to set a special password, And of course, we need a prepayment account because it's like a holding account. The amount is moving in and out of a prepayment account. So it's going to be temporarily there until the check is actually cut or the payment is actually made. We looked at requisitions earlier when we were looking at workflow. Um, just to add, the print requisition feature has been added to GP. So when requisition was released back in GP 2013, users could not print requisitions. And most likely the reason being because requisitions are internal document and it's meant to be submitted through the workflow, so you get it through emails. But there were requests by numerous customers for printed requisition. And so in the interim, some customers had to have that requisition created using SSRS SQL reporting services, but now it has been added to GP. So in case you do need to print a requisition, you now could print from within GP and from within the requisition entry window. Okay, and so that is it basically in terms of the distribution enhancement and also for all areas, which would be the system, the financial and distribution enhancements. Now, I have not focused on every single new feature in GP, but what I've done is focus on the more popular new features, right? So those of you who are interested in upgrading GP, you could reach out to us and we could provide you with a more comprehensive listing of the new features in GP. If there is a particular area that you saw today and you wanted a bit more information or you need a demo on it, that can be provided as well. You simply contact us at operations@optimus.guru. What I will do is I'll hold on just a couple minutes in case any of you have any questions before we conclude. Okay, so I didn't see any questions coming through, but just to remind you, you can email us if you need to at operations@optimus.guru. You can also reach out to me, rona-leah.sahadeo@optimus.guru, or any one of us that you are familiar with at Optimus, and we will be able to help you out with your queries. Thanks, everyone, and have a very good day. Thank you very much for your time today.